And we're live. Igor, how you doing, man? Thanks for being on.
I'm good. I'm good. Hi, everyone.
Can everyone hear us? I think we should be good. Um, let's see here. So, welcome everybody to Lunch and Learn with Igor. Igor Kudryk. Did I get that right, Igor?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Cool, great. As you probably know, the title of our event is about 3 tips to becoming a savvier Salesforce developer. But before we get into those, I'm going to give a short intro for Igor. For anyone who doesn't know him, Igor is a Salesforce developer and the founder of Cloud Prism, where he teaches Apex to absolute beginners in programming. Igor started out in high school with a focus on learning German, but learned development after solving 1,000 tasks in Java. He was then accepted into a computer science program and was then able to get his first job as a developer. Igor has been teaching programming for 2 years now, and his social media content speaks for itself. If you follow Igor on LinkedIn or have been on his website, which is cloud-prism, prism.com, you'll know that the man clearly knows his craft and is a very skilled communicator. Again, welcome, Igor.
Thank you. Thank you for such a warm introduction. I really appreciate it, and I'm quite excited to be here.
Yeah, me too, man. Absolutely. Igor and I, of course, did some pre-gaming, so from that, I knew this was going to be a fun conversation. But without further ado, let's get into the tips. Igor, you want to give your first one?
Yes, sure. So my first tip, and this is something that I'm also posting on LinkedIn quite a lot, is that people should kind of build their own database of solved problems. So like as you're going on as a developer, you solve quite a lot of problems on a daily basis. And what I noticed, I have, I think, like around 4 years of experience. And what I noticed is these 4 years is that most problems, they are kind of not really new. They're kind of a recombination of problems that you already had, that you already saw or heard or just chatted with someone. So as soon as you hit these problems, as soon as you see and solve these problems, it's quite beneficial to actually build a database and just short write down what have you actually done. And I have a fun story about it. This is something that I've been doing not from the beginning when I started, and this is one of my biggest regrets as a developer. So I think like a year or two ago, I was in a hackathon. The hackathon was about Salesforce and Apex here in Munich, where I currently live. And the hackathon was basically, okay, hackathon is something like where when people go together and solve some, like you have different teams, for example, 5 teams, and people solve like some challenge together. And the task was, okay, let's solve a problem where people need to generate some PDF solution, for example. Like the problem was much more complex, but I just simplify. I don't have it exactly in my mind, but approximately it doesn't really matter the details. And we got into different teams and we started solving this problem. And then what I immediately noticed that this is the problem that I had like 2 years ago before the hackathon, and that I already had pre-solved in my solutions. So what I did, I just took everything from my solutions, copy pasted into our solution for the hackathon. Then we modified it, we tweaked it, of course, a bit, but basically that was almost the whole solution. And then we finished the whole hackathon before each team quite quick, and then we just had some cookies and coffee. So building the database, it's one of the biggest life hack. And imagine if you do it for like 6 years, for 10 years, you can definitely do a lot of stuff with this database. You can start blogging with the database or whatever. So it's very valuable asset that you build.
Yep, absolutely. I've heard the same tip. You know, when I've worked for a consultancy and it's just things take way longer up front for junior devs for several reasons. One of which is this exact thing. And I do this to some degree too. I'm trying to get better at it, but I've found that, like you kind of mentioned, I think from your story, the way I do it is kind of disjointed. I'm like, oh, I remember this one solution. It's buried in my files somewhere. So my follow-up question for this point is, do you have any recommendations on how we should approach this? Any like tools? Is it, GitHub? Do you keep all your code stored in a Salesforce Dev org? How do you approach it?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I personally use Notion. I'm a big fan of Notion, and there are kind of like two parts to this approach to storing the solution. So you definitely need to store somewhere the code itself, and sometimes the code can be quite lots. So if you have like solution that consists out of multiple classes or patterns, the code can be quite lot. So I tend to save the whole code on the GitHub as a private repository, and then having like a short description and links, and like having certain just resources that linking in the Notion itself. I also have heard people keep telling me that Obsidian is quite good. I haven't tried it out, but if you're one of the people who like concerned about privacy and don't really trust cloud databases, and you want to store everything that just belongs to you, then Obsidian is probably the best. Notion, it's cloud, so I'm kind of used Notion. It's also very easy to use, so it's like you can learn it very quick. So this is my approach to it.
Cool. Now, yeah, I use Notion. I feel like I could get a lot better with it though, so that's great. Cool. Tip number 1. That was a good one. Let's see tip number 2.
Yeah, tip number 2 is something that I personally did completely wrong when I started. Is spend more time planning than writing code. That was something that was really my biggest mistake as a junior. I was really, so usually how it goes, junior goes to work, junior gets assigned a task, or you try to solve something on the internet, and then the first thing that you do, you just go code, and then you're like, oh, I'm stuck, and then you code, and then you stuck, and so on. It's kind of a circle. But what I found out that works better is, first, when you see a solution, first you should go through the planning phase. And the planning phase, it means go and research what are the possible solutions to it. So maybe there are some solutions on Google that you're not aware of that are super easy to solve the task that you otherwise spend hours. So the first step is research the solution. The second step is like ideate possible solutions that you researched. Find the best one, and then write down like a very big, like extensive plan as good as you can. Of course, it's impossible to plan everything in advance. There's always something that you cannot plan, but or there are also things that you cannot really. You kind of try to plan for them, but you cannot fully. So you kind of like see some areas that you don't really understand how to solve, and this is also okay. So this is okay to include in plan something like, okay, this part I have no idea how to solve, but approximately I think this and these are possible solutions. And then after you have your plan, this is something that you can actually go and show your senior developer or everyone who is a bit more experienced. And it usually takes quite quick for an experienced person just to read it and like find the issues where your plan might go wrong, because this is what they do all the time.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's a good one. I can say that I've been in a position where I led a small team of devs, and I would have loved it if they would have come to me with a plan, because it would have, and not that I know everything. I'm last night I spent way too long on a simple problem, right? But I will say if you have a plan, and especially if you're communicating with a senior, it just makes everything so much more streamlined, because you can just get unified and clear before you then spend effort, and you'll end up, what was the saying? Measure twice, cut once, right? So
yes, exactly. And it's not something that slows down. It's something that accelerates you, even though you spent more time on ideating, searching for solutions. But in the end, you will move quicker by having a plan, by being more thoughtful than just rushing into actions.
Exactly. Absolutely. Follow up for this one. Are there any like specific maybe tactics or maybe framework type things that you apply, or any approaches that you apply when you're trying to approach how to plan a project?
So yes, I definitely. I think it depends quite a lot on like what are you planning for. I tend to write my plans so as I can give it to some other developers, because this is also something that's quite good when you have everything planned out. You can also say, hey, now I'm not the one who is actually coding that. Now someone else should code it. So the way I do it is I create very detailed technical design as far as I can go. and that includes also like all the technical steps, like all the classes that needs to be written down, all the methods that needs to be written down. Of course, there's some limit to it, but this is the way I approach it, and I use Notion for that as well.
Gotcha. Notion. Cool. We're getting a couple. We're getting a comment, several here. Let's see. I think we have time to
Second,
grab it. What's your opinion on test-driven development in Salesforce?
oh, this is interesting. Yeah, I'm getting, yeah. I recently talked. I think yesterday I talked with my colleague about test-driven development. I didn't really see any project that was successfully applying that. But I think it's because I just happen not to see that. So I don't see it as a most most popular approach. But I don't know. Maybe you have different experience.
No, I would say my experience is the same. I feel like, honestly, I saw I forget who it was from. I saw a recent video about how it seems that Salesforce devs are often they're coming from having learned Salesforce without this development background, or they're coming from the software development background without Salesforce. And I feel like I'm the former, having kind of just scrapped my way forward, learned how to dev with Salesforce to start. So I feel like I could really benefit from doing, learning some of the more proper software engineering principles, and actually trying to be more intentional about implementing, solid design principles and test-driven development and that kind of thing. So I don't have a strong opinion on it. I feel like I should. And so maybe this comment will actually spur me to dig into it. But so cool. Good question. Tip number 3.
Yeah, tip number 3, and this is more for like beginner developers. Write a lot of code. So the people who are good at coding, they tend to have written the most code. So they have written at some point quite a lot of code. That's why they become quite good at it. And this was also my way of learning Salesforce development, or learning coding in general. It's just basically brute forcing through a lot of different exercises and learning and solving practice exercises as much as possible. And when I say like a lot, people think about like, oh, 10, oh, 20, 50, or like, oh, wow, 100. No, like a lot, it's like 1,000.
Right. Like you told, right?
Exactly. And there are like certain, I don't know, like kind of magical things that are starting happening once you cross 200-300 tasks, because you develop this developer mind, because you have seen quite a lot of different applications, different ways to solve some challenges, and you tend to kind of like match the patterns together. And this is only possible when you see and solve these patterns quite a lot of time. So 1,000 tasks, this is probably something that you should aim for. Yes, exactly. I've never seen a single person solving like 1,000 tasks and not being good or decent at development.
Yes.
But one important thing to it, like this should not be 1,000 like hello world tasks. These tasks should be like progressively more difficult. So as soon as you feel quite good with some tasks, you definitely shouldn't solve 10 other tasks to the same topic. So it should be constantly feeling like you're struggling and you don't know anything. And this is a good indicator of that you're moving into correct directions with a lot of practice.
Yep, absolutely. I can say too that let's see, in my experience, I feel like sometimes there's this kind of balance for Salesforce between, okay, should I get certified first and pursue certifications, or should I get experience first? And the answer for me is really, you kind of have to put one leg in front of the other and kind of alternate, because I can say in the cases where I feel like I've done a lot of projects or attempts at solving problems first, and then tried to study for the exam, you'll see things in the exam that you're like, oh my gosh, it would have been helpful to know that a month ago when I was like spending 8 hours on a problem. Whereas if you start with studying for the cert, it'll kind of, for me, it goes one ear and out the other sometimes, because you have no application, you have no context. So I would say, yes, trying to solve the stuff, trying to solve problems at scale, even super helpful for them when you do get your hands on like the theoretical knowledge, you know how to apply it. So very cool. let's see. My follow-up question. Let me see. I had one.
We
Oh
have
yeah.
also,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have any recommendation? And this was a commented question here. Where can we find good Salesforce specific practice exercises to iterate over? Because frankly, I don't know if I could find 1,000 right now. Maybe like 100 if I had to. Do you have any suggestions?
Yes, yes. Um, I have some of my on my website. There's not 1,000, but I'm working on it. There's they're free, so you can go and try them. There's also campapix.org. You can find all these links if you go through my recent posts, and then you can see my list of websites that I recommend. So I think there is, unfortunately, in Salesforce, and this is something that we actually have a problem in Salesforce ecosystem. Epic step by step. Yeah, I see someone recommending Epic step by step. This is good. It has like 10 triggers exercises. They're good. So like it's also good. And this is one of the problems that we have in comparison to other programming fields in Salesforce, that we don't really have like these websites where you can actually find like 1,000 tasks, which
Right.
other programming languages like Java or Python, they easily have 1,000, if not 10,000. So for Salesforce and for those who don't want to start with another programming language, that should be kind of a combination between everything. So if you go through my website, through Camp Apex, through Apex Sandbox, Apex Step by Step. So these are four like the main, and then you can definitely collect quite a lot of different. Plus Trailhead, of course.
Sure. Trailhead's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. No,
I
that's
see someone posting links that they're awesome. Thank you.
yeah. I'm gonna pronounce your first name. I'm gonna try incorrectly, but I'm gonna try Tisenko. Thank you. Those are some great resources. I appreciate that. So let's see. Those were our 3 tips. I would like to talk a little bit. We have some bonus tips that we might get to if we have time. But before we get there, I would like to talk about your initiative, Igor, because I know you have some cool stuff brewing. Cloud Prism, correct?
Yes.
Tell us about
Exactly.
Cloud Prism. First, let's start with what made you want to start. What's the sort of the motivation behind Cloud Prism?
The motivation is exactly what we discussed. So there is a quite limited amount of exercises, tasks, of actual help that you can get if you're going from that direction that you mentioned previously. From I can already Salesforce, but I want to learn Salesforce development. And this direction is like really tough. And this is something that I saw when I was working with Salesforce, that there's really not that many resources out there. And I was trying to create like the best resource that I could. And at Cloud Prism, we focus exactly on this transition. If you don't have any coding knowledge, if you have already some Salesforce experience, then we can help you to get actually to development, to learn how to code. We have quite a lot of practice exercises, and we do it in form of the courses and one-to-one mentoring with people.
Cool. Yeah, I obviously I asked these questions partially for the benefit of everybody listening. I did do research and kind of looked at Cloud Prism. It seems very cool for a lot of reasons, but one of which is it feels to me, correct me if I'm wrong here, it feels kind of like a combination between kind of a course and a mentorship, where if you just have a course, then it's so easy. Like I've done before Salesforce, I did like a free code camp, and it's really cool, valuable, but easy to get distracted, easy to fall off course, easy to get stuck and not really know where to get help. And then for the mentor, having a mentor is cool, but then you need something to iterate on. You need something to kind of progress through. So I think it's what you're doing at Cloud Prism's really cool, a combination of the two. So very cool, man. Thanks for sharing that with us. I feel like you're probably I'm sure you're already helping people, and I think it seems like you're kind of ramping Cloud Prism up here in September, right? So probably going to
Exactly. So I was doing this one-to-one mentoring with people for the last 2 years. And now I'm actually open in September. In September, we are actually opening like the first group course for everyone, because it's also important to have like this group experience, not only one-to-one mentoring. But I still believe a lot in this one-to-one mentoring, because this is something that people really underestimate, I think, in programming, because you find all the time the stories on the internet, like how someone went in 3 months by learning on YouTube to working for 6 figures for Google. And this is not actually like I can believe that it's possible, but This is quite difficult, and in programming, it's quite important to have someone where you can sit and talk through the code. And this is something that I'm still keeping for Cloud Prism, and I'm going to keep it for as long as I can. So
awesome. And if you just want to get your feet wet, you should follow Igor on LinkedIn, because he maybe like once every couple weeks or so, he'll drop like a amazing carousel that's very like accessible at like an admin plus level. So you should follow him. But very cool, man. Thanks for sharing about Cloud Prism. Let's move. We have maybe 8 minutes or so. Let's move into a couple of our bonus tips. So I saw that you had one on consistency. Let's talk about consistency.
Yes. So because I was teaching for 2 years almost, I saw quite a lot of people, and I saw quite a lot of reasons why people actually not getting into development and why people actually got into development. So, and the reason number one by far is not IQ or smartness or something like this. Reason number one is just consistency. It's like the best students I have are just consistent. And this is the biggest life hack I can ever give, is just stay consistent day to day. I had students who were like super smart and could solve any tasks, learn everything so quick, but then they stopped for like months or two, and then they went again, and then they stopped, and when you don't have the consistency, the people who have consistency, they win so much quicker. It might be a bit slower, but in the end, if you zoom out for a year or maybe 2 years, that's definitely the skill number one. And this is also difficult skill to have. It's like, it sounds very, very easy, but this is so difficult, and for me as well.
Seriously, no, it's difficult. Yeah. And in our era of, scrolling and shorts and whatever, TikTok brain kind of thing, it's difficult because it's boring, right? It's difficult because it's not fireworks, but what is exciting and not boring is the compounding effects that occur when you are consistent, when you string together 30, 40, 50, 60 days in a row, or, roughly, of consistent effort. It's more progress than you would guess because of the compounding, continued focus. So it's a good point. Let's see here. Got a couple minutes left. Why don't you drop the next bonus tip for us, Igor?
Yeah, if someone also has some questions, I guess this is a good time to ask as well.
Yeah, go ahead and drop them in the comments, and we can grab them up.
Yes.
Absolutely.
My next tip, and this is something that I see quite a lot, and this is very controversial because this is something that I'm not following, obviously, is posting content on LinkedIn is a bit overrated. I know, like, there's like people who say like you have to post a lot, but for example, for me, I don't really see that much of a job benefits from posting. So I don't really get so much more recruiters' attentions because I post. I do get a bit more attention, but this is not like 2x or 10x what people sometimes say. So I think that it's still important to have some online presence, but in the end, companies hire for skills and not for followers. So if you have skills, you will get hired. If you don't have skills, LinkedIn won't help. But if you have skills and you have LinkedIn, that's the best combination. Yeah. But don't get like too much attention to it. Like, spend maybe 10 or 5% of your time on it, but not too much.
That's a great point. And I will say, in my opinion, just to finish off, I see we have a question just to finish off this point before we get to that. I would say that even like when you think about like the LinkedIn algorithm and what gets more attention, and building your brand or getting recruiters' attention, all that, it's much more, especially if you're going for a technical skill set like development, it's much more effective to post once a week or maybe twice a week if you're really trying to build a following, but make those posts showing your skills or value-based, where you're communicating. Like Igor, he posts an amazing carousel full of technical, valuable content, rather than something lower effort and less value consequently. Like I would advise, if you are going to post at all, prioritize those higher value posts that emphasize and demonstrate your skill set. Even if it's like you drop a short of a quick screen share of something you built obviously make it, agnostic, private, don't show any customer orgs or anything, but you can copy it over to your dev org or whatever, and anonymize it and show a demo at just 10 seconds of something you built. To me, that's more valuable than the lower effort, less technical posts for a developer, at least. But
100%.
So we have another question here. Let's see the top one. How much time do you think a beginner needs to feel comfortable with Apex? And that's probably how many hours spent coding, when you say, Igor?
Yeah, this is. I mean, as always, it depends. The timeline that I usually see is around 8 to 14, 15, 20 months, something like this. So 8 to 20 months. This is something that people usually spend going from zero to actually working as a developer. Then it depends on a lot of factors, like in which country are you. So for example, in Germany here, it's a bit more easier to find a job than in US. But if you're in Ukraine, for example, then in Ukraine is much, much, much more difficult to find than this both countries. So it depends a lot, but at least 8 months. This is what I see people.
When you say 8 months, what would you say is an average time, maybe per week or over those 8 months? Like, how many hours of I'm sitting in front of a computer putting forth effort? How many hours would you say?
I would say around like at least 3 to 10, like something in this range. So I would say like around 5 hours. That's something that people also can put into this. But also, like if you're working full time, 3 hours is also possible to do that. But the consistency, it's much more important. I think yes.
So sorry, just to make sure I'm understanding, 5 a week. Is that what you meant?
5 week, yes, 5 week. It's also quite a lot. So it's like you every day, you basically code every day. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, that's good stuff. Let's see. Second question. We got about a minute left. Let's pick one of these. Let's pick the second one here. What's expected from a junior dev to know or be able to do?
Oh, that depends. I do hiring for the company where I work. Like I do sometimes interviews. It depends on the country where you are. So it's like in US, there's like one requirements, but usually the requirements are actually just be able to code. This is the most frequent. At least here in Germany, it's like if you can code, you will be hired. But more specific triggers, queuables, LWC not really needed that much for juniors usually, but being good in Apex, this is something that, and also PD1. These are the average requirements.
Platform Developer 1, for anyone not familiar with, that's a certification. But yeah, no, that's a good one. Maybe last question here. I'll lead with my answer, and then I'll be curious to hear yours. Is Apex harder to learn than Python, or are they equally the same? I would say if you're starting from zero, my experience, Python's a little easier, but if you're trying to be a Salesforce developer, Apex is infinitely more valuable. What do you think, Igor?
Totally. I agree.
Cool. All right. Well, unless, Igor, you have any closing thoughts for us?
Just code, code a lot, and then see you all on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Yes. And don't forget, Igor is on his website is cloud-prism, prism.com. If you want to check out his content and his website and what he's doing over there, it's very cool. Thank you all for jumping on. I think I had a lot of fun with this conversation, and who knows, maybe we'll do a part 2 at some point in the future. But thanks a lot, Igor, and thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you.
See ya.